So you'll see a display privacy policy on the top of the screen. So if you do want to read it, please feel free or dismiss it there. I'm now going to hand you over to Paddy O'Connor, who's going to talk you through the presentation.
Cheers, Kieran. So as Kieran said, tonight's Problems Clinic was created by you as coaches. So this is our 8th webinar coming down the line tonight. And what we asked you as coaches to do is to pose some questions to us so we could answer them for you. So problems that you want solved, things that you're thinking, well, look, I wouldn't mind getting a bit of help on that. So that's the idea around the question tonight. And it's a very interactive one that you posed all the questions to us. So you might just click on there, Kieran, for a second. So just thanks, first of all, to all the coaches that was sent them in. So we had over 35 questions sent in to all the club coaches that sent them in from all around the country, never mind Longford, which is great to see. So just tip on there, Kieran, again. You're looking for coaching advice asking these questions. So we picked 3 people that we thought were highly qualified to answer these questions. So first up we have is Alan Mulhall, former Offaly goalkeeper, has huge experience in coaching the games, formerly being games manager and development officer with Offaly GAA, and now is currently the coaching and games officer in Leinster GAA. Alan has a wealth of experience and knowledge, and at the moment his current role in his club is under-8 coach. That's probably his toughest job at the minute, is probably the under-8s. But as Alan has a huge knowledge from his playing days with dealing with different managers and his coaching days through his job with Leinster GAA and currently being Leinster Games manager. Next up then we have Eddie Boapsey from Westmeath. Eddie, over 15 years experience in coaching and games, was involved with Westmeath as a development officer for many years, is now currently director of coaching at Naomh Olaf Club in Dublin. Holds a master's in coaching science and has experience from all the way from the Westmeath senior footballers all the way down to nursery level, and has been involved in many club teams around the country, and has lots of experience all the way from adult all the way down to child level. Finally, then we have Frank McNamee, our very own Frank McNamee. You all would probably know Frank from Longford here, former Longford legend and fatherman in Gales. But the big thing with Frank is Frank has a huge interest and knowledge in coaching. And he's someone that we would always tip into and has given a lot of help to us in coaching games and devising different activities and stuff, trying to improve Gaelic games in Longford. Frank's coaching experience, he formerly Longford under-21 manager, former Dublin minor manager, and has worked with development squads at Longford level and in Dublin as well. So a huge wealth of knowledge Frank has down the line. So 3 very esteemed coaches that are going to be giving advice through the night. Okay, Kieran? So what we've done is we've went through all the problems that you sent in and we put them into different sections. So we put them into technical, tactical, psychological, structure and planning, and building relationships. So each person is going to answer different parts of this. So as I said, the lads will answer the questions. If you have any questions yourself or want a clear understanding of what they're doing or saying, you can put that in the chat box and we'll try and come to it at the end. The second part then of the process is that the lads will go through just some coaching tips that they want to provide to us as coaches, things that work well for them. And finally, then we're going to throw up a resource page that we put together of all the best resources we think that are out there at the minute for coaches working with club teams. Okay, Kieran? So the first one is technical. So I'm going to get Alan just to throw on his camera and his mic. And the first question that was asked just on the technical side of things, you can click away here. So what tips have you for improving free takers' ability other than repeated practice with a bag of footballs? What coaching tips would you provide, Alan, to players?
Thanks very much, Paddy. First of all, thanks for the invite. Nice to be asked over to Longford. Anytime I've been over, been very warmly welcomed in fairness to the lads and the club officers. So the first question is something that I'm taking frees a long time now. We started kicking them when I was under 8 or that, and I would have been always off the ground. So to me, the first thing is a routine. It's very, very important to have a routine, not just so that your player knows what they're doing each time, but to give that confidence. A free taker lives in confidence. Once they have been up in the pitch with that bag of balls, like you were saying, they get used to kicking the ball up. But they have their set routine so that it's the same when they're down in Arda doing their own kicking on their own, or when they're playing in Pearse Park in a county final. so that they have their own routine. Whether my own one for freeze was always 5 steps back, 2 to the side, compose myself, and a bit of mental visualization, which is the next thing I'm going to go on to, which would be straight over the black spot is where I wanted the ball, and then the focus then was through the bottom of the ball, right through the bottom of the ball. So straight over the black spot, bottom of the ball. That's just what I was saying to myself when I was kicking. So get the routine right, get one that works for you. Everyone has a different one. Everyone has a different thing that they're good at and feel very comfortable with. And it's only when they're comfortable that they become really good free takers. So for me, set your routine that works for yourself, whether that's out of hands or off the ground, whichever way works for you. Visualize what you're going to do. Visualize numerous times with the wind, without the wind, into the wind, whatever way you're going to be kicking it. You're visualizing the way the ball is going to float. I'd often get a little bit of stick off of some other players because I'd be a little bit slow maybe taking the freeze, but that's because I would be visualizing where it's going. And if it's a real windy day and the wind is coming from the right, I'd just take that extra second or two to see the way I see the ball going. So routine, visualization, and then what I think is the most important thing for players. Okay, all that happens on match day, but when you're in your training ground and you're up on your own with that bag of balls, a training routine, a practice routine. So what I mean by that is you don't just throw out 20 footballs and you start kicking from all angles across the pitch. Most of you would have heard of Matt Connor, one of the best footballers ever. And lucky enough, Matt is from a Island club, and my father would have told me at a very early age, Matt's practice routine, which would be start on the 14-metre line or 14-yard ball down, do your routine, kick it over, straight in the middle of the goals. Go back 5-7 meters, same again. Another 5-7, same again. 5-7, same again. Until you get out about 5 or 6 different kicks. Then go a bit to the right of the goals and a bit to the left of the goals. So that means you have 17, 18 kicks in confidence inside in your own comfort zone before you start going out to the harder ones out at the more difficult angles. So when you have that, it's not a case of just going up firing the balls out everywhere. You have that routine that's there, and that's going to stand to you. And you purpose to your practice then. It's not just going for the sake of it. There's a real purpose to it, and you can see where's your comfortable areas, where's the ones that you struggle with, and which ones you may need to do twice, 3 times, 4 times. And you keep going doing that. So that's my advice for free taking.
Deadly, Alan. Thanks. Just click on to the next one there, Kieran. Just for everyone there, just one thing I would advise you to do as well, just be jotting down the points here of what you're taking up. And that's what we're trying to get from tonight, is that you can take little bits out, little nuggets yourself from what the lads are giving back to us. So if you have any points, jot them down on a piece of paper, you have them in a notebook for yourself. So the next one then, my under 14 goalkeeper is an excellent shot stopper. Enjoys playing in goals, but his kickouts are very weak and poor. Is there anything I can do to improve both the kickouts and his confidence? So it's probably related to the last question as well, Alan.
Yeah, it would be Paddy. Yeah. I suppose I'd like to break this down into 2 sections. The first one is the kick out itself, and your player has to be comfortable striking the ball. So they have to get that strike right. So when they get the ball, I would take them to one side and come down early at training or stay on after training and just get used to striking the ball as comfortable as possible and as far as possible. So they just have to get used to driving the ball and just knowing what that feels like. I know it sounds very, very silly, but you have to know what a good strike feels like. And when you're getting used to kicking it out, whether it's out your hands or off the ground, whichever way the rules decide in Longford at different stages, that comfort with that strike means that they know what they're going to be facing every time they stand over the ball. Okay? The next thing would be, maybe if distance is an issue, or if you think that they're forcing it distance-wise and trying too hard because they're trying to kick it too far, I'd maybe bring them out and get them kicking back in towards the goals. Bring them out to the 21-metre or 20-metre line, get them to strike back towards the goals and show them how easy they're kicking that ball for it to travel 20 metres. Bring them out to the edge of the, show them how easy you're striking the ball for it to just travel 35 metres. It's all going on the head, and it's all about getting confidence into the players. So I would have been involved with Offaly under-20s this year with their goalkeepers, and I was doing a bit of kicking, and we had a lad that, you know, he was a very good kicker, but he couldn't judge his distances and didn't know his distances. So we changed it around, and we showed him how easy he was able to strike the ball from the 45 back in. And the difference that made for him to get to know his distance, to get to know the strength of his kicks. It was huge. So that'd be very good for a goalkeeper's confidence when they're practicing the kick. The other thing then on confidence to me would be, I think you have to set it up that they're getting all the wins for the first few things in a training session. So when I say that, get successful kicks. So maybe their kickouts are unopposed. Bring a rule in, you can charge for the whole training session. So you can put whatever rules you want in. So every kickout is unopposed. Then maybe shadowing a bit of pressure on from the forwards onto the backs or the opposition midfielders. But it's still giving your goalie the confidence that he's able to do these kicks. And he chance a few more kicks if he knows that it's going to be cut out. And then build their confidence over and over and over again in each training session. The last thing I would do there is I try and find a kick out that works for your goalie. Every goalie, like Damien Sheridan was on the call, or Paddy Cum, whoever, they always have a go-to kick out. They have something that works for them, and something that's easy, and you're almost 99% guaranteed it's going to work for them each time. So have a go-to that you can work on, and if things go a bit pear-shaped, you're able to make the call into him, or you tell him, or you tell the centre back or half back or midfielders, whoever it is, that they make the call for this kick out, that he can perform. You know that he's very comfortable, whether it's kicking out to the left side or his right side, but you know that that's where it's going to go, and that's to get him back onto the confidence back going there. Okay? And then the last thing I would say is, I take the pressure off of him. He's very young, he's under 14. I try and take the pressure off of him and get on to the rest of the boys, the half-backs, full-backs, midfielders, half-forwards, whoever he's trying to hit for, that they have to make more runs and make more of an effort out the field to try and just take that bit of pressure off him and say, all you have to do is kick the ball into this space or kick the ball into this area. The boys are going to be there for you. Okay? And you get into his head that way and get into the mentality there that he feels comfortable in those kicks.
Deadly, Alan. Brilliant. Yeah, just on to the next one there. So just at under 7 and 8, is it best to teach skill specifically like soloing to those who can't get the skill in a one-on-one situation while the session continues? Or is there other methods without the child feeling singled out or might be taken away from the main session?
It's throwing me straight into it, Paddy. 3 in a row.
Yeah.
Yeah. I suppose this is a tricky one, and it's all about how the kids feel during the training session. My advice on this one would be try and incorporate it into the early part of your training session. So if there's a few skills that you know a player is going to be struggling with, try and incorporate that into your training session. You're actually going to be doing it anyway when it's 7 and 8 year olds, that they're getting loads of chances to succeed and loads of chances to practice their skills. Try and incorporate it in the session. I don't see any problem at all pulling players out of a match situation or a drill situation or a game situation to give them a little bit of a spot and fix. So you're spotting the problem and then you're going to fix it. I don't see any problem with that at all. The only thing I would advise is that you pull out all players at different stages, or you pull out a number of players at different stages to give so that no one feels totally isolated, or so that parents that are lying across the fence can't turn around and say to you, why are you pulling out my Johnny every time? You're pulling out different players, having a quick word. All it could be is 30, 40 seconds and they're back into the game. It might take a little longer with some players, but make sure you pull everyone out. And the last thing I would do is I'd set homework. Yeah? So it doesn't have to be a group thing. Just say to the player when he's walking off or when you're after doing that little chat with them, I want you to try and get 50 solos in now before Tuesday night or something like that, and see how you're getting on with it. And then maybe set a different target for some other players. But I don't see any harm in pulling that out and showing him what you're trying to make him improve on. I think it's a very good sign of a coach that he's comfortable to coach one-on-one. Anyone can coach a big group and set out stuff for them, but to be able to identify a problem with a player and to be able to address it and talk to them, I think that's a sign of a very good coach.
Brilliant, Alan. I suppose one thing I would take in there is that taking everyone out is a real big thing, that you can take different players out all the time. It's not just the weaker players, and that'll hit home as well, which is really good, Very, very important. Okay, we're going to give you a rest now, Alan. So we're just going to go to Eddie. So if you can turn on your mic and your camera, Eddie. Question here from an under 10 coach. So I'm working with an under 10 team at the minute. How would you go about coaching the tackle in Gaelic football?
Okay, thanks very much for the invite, Paddy and lads as well. Delighted to be here. I suppose the first thing I'd say about that is age doesn't matter. There's no specific thing for an under 10 to coach the tackle. Players could be at different levels of development, so the age won't define what their skill level is. So my first step is always teach the body technique. Get the body in a position so that you can create an opportunity to tackle first. So for people that's familiar with the head, hands, feet, I would probably look at that in reverse for this one. I would look at the player's feet and try and get the body into a position where you're either up beside the player you're about to tackle or slightly in front, so that the opportunity to reach across the body with the near hand is available firstly. I think if the footwork is wrong in that position, you will create a bad habit and consistently, and that's what you're trying to avoid with a new skill like that, or a technique, or probably a complicated skill, a complex skill like that. So it's running a section of drills, even if it's only one person jogging with a ball at 50% pace and the other person running beside it, but only making the hand across the body when they're either in that level position or slightly in front position with the feet, that they can create a proper opportunity to tackle and win the ball back. I think at that age, it's more important, rather than raising the intensity in games or tackles, to make sure that they do it correct often enough, and to move to the opposite side of the body as well, that the left side steps in with both tackles, and that they can also adjust their feet, because there may be a massive difference there in the coordination of the player from one side to the other. So it'll need the same work over and over. So getting the body in that position right, and then introducing to the game-based scenario as quick as possible, with obviously a little target on how many correct tackles they get, not how many tackles. And I think that's very important, that you only count correct tackles in the situation, so players get so you're emphasizing the importance of getting the correct tackle in during the games, and that's all that's acceptable.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
No, brilliant. And that, looking at that technique is really important, and that good tackles are counted, not poor tackles. That's very, very important as well. Good stuff.
Yeah.
So we're just going to nip on to Frank now. So the next one, Frank, if you can turn on your mic and your camera there. So the coach said here he's coaching a minor team who tends to shy away from kick passing the ball, but they choose the safe option of hand passing and trying to work the ball through the hands. This makes us less dangerous in attack. I encourage him to kick pass in training and in matches, but it doesn't seem to be having much effect. Any advice on activities I could use to show the benefit of kick passing when attacking?
Thanks, Paddy. First, again, thanks for the invite. Delighted to be here, and hope I can help out a little bit. I suppose the first point I'll make is that there's no such thing really as the perfect answer or the 100% correct answer to any of these questions. As we know, there's so many variables in Gaelic football, and there's so many occasions when you have to tweak things, and it depends on a lot of factors. But anyway, I think it's a very good question, because it's something I think that a lot of coaches will see in teams, not just perhaps up to minor level, but even as you progress, particularly as you progress into seniors, because the game has become so possession driven now that the emphasis is on retaining possession at all costs. And I think that certainly leads to a discouragement to kick the ball. And I certainly would encourage it at underage level. At minor level, which this question relates to, I would place a strong emphasis on building a kicking ability in the team as well. Now, how you go about doing that, I think the first thing really is that you have to, I suppose, change the mindset, or you have to get the lads to understand why it is a benefit to the team. And that might involve sitting around, having a chat, putting the question up on the whiteboard as to, what is our advantage to kicking the ball? What will we gain from kicking the ball? And asking some questions, because I always go back to the late John Morrison used to always say, it's not about always having the right answers, but being able to come up with the questions that are important. So, like, if you tease out that with the lads as to, what will we gain from having a kicking game, kicking the ball into our forwards, and they will come up with the answers. Like, they will eventually come around to suggestions such as, well, we get the ball in quicker before the defense get time to get set up, or we may get a chance to create a one-on-one, or various other opportunities. So mentally, you get the message across that this is to our advantage to be able to do that. So that's the first thing. And then you put it into practice in coaching. So like you set up your drills, you set up your game plays, and as the question related to activities, like there's some really good activities incorporated in the previous webinars. Like I recall a really good one from James Carroll that sets up the team regardless of how many numbers you have, but it's gameplay that actually encourages people to kick the ball into the forwards to utilize the advantage. But another element to it is that, like, and this is a general thing I would say about coaching, is that so much of coaching is individual now anyway. So like when we say, it's a very generic statement to say we want to add a kicking game, or we want to become more of a kicking team, or we want to have kicking in our identity. In reality, that will mean, you know, identifying the players that are in that middle third position and talking to them on a one-to-one. So it could be a midfielder, or it could be a wing back, or it could be a wing forward. And it's a case of a chat as to, well, you know, what is the picture, to identify the picture in their mind as to perhaps why they're not kicking the ball. And you might get some very interesting answers. Like I can actually recall having this conversation with a minor team, and it transpired that one of the stats that they was being measured was negative turnovers. And negative turnovers incorporated misplaced kick passes. And the result of that was there was a fear to kick the ball, because our players who found themselves in that middle third position didn't want to be ending up as as adding to the negative stats. So I think you have to convey the message as part of your one-to-one coaching that I want to encourage you to kick the ball. This is something that is worthwhile adding to your game. Yes, by all means, there's a time to retain possession, but there's also a time to look up, play with your head up, and to see an opportunity inside and forward line, and to be able to avail of that. And that comes with practice and with encouragement. And that is the final point. So it's initially the mindset, then it's putting into practice. But then the third part of it is, and it's the same with anything you're trying to encourage in a team. If you're asking for this, then you have to enable and allow for things to go wrong. Like if you're saying, okay, I want to encourage kicking, and then a couple of passes go off target or they're misplaced, then it's a case of retaining that positive and retaining the encouragement, so that you allow for the mistakes to be made over a period of time, especially in training and even in games, because they're not going to go to target all the time. We know that's how it works. But it is really important to close that circle with that encouragement and with that support. And eventually then, with repeated practice, more of them will go to target, and more of them will be in the place that you want them to be. But overall, it's a very interesting question. Adding a kicking game, I would say, first of all, get the mindset right. Give the message as to why it's important, put it into practice in a game, and then support it when it happens.
Brilliant, Frank. A good staged approach to that. And again, you said it can work for any skill, that approach, which is really important. It's not just doing it in training, it's the pre-stuff, convincing the players and showing them and letting them practice it and letting them succeed, and then keep practicing. So I think that stage approach is a great idea. Okay. So the next one is, we're going to move on to tactical. So Frank is next up. So we're going on to the tactical section of the question. So question in from a coach here: how can I coach my team to choose between when it's the best time to man mark their direct opponent or defend together as a unit? So just looking at man marking and defending together as a unit.
Again, it's a very interesting question. And again, the way the game is evolving, almost all coaches will say now that when we have the ball, we're all attacking, and we don't have the ball, we're all defending. And I can recall Podgy Davis making that point in his talk a couple of weeks ago, that when the ball goes dead at the opposite end, then we're all defending. So I think it's a kind of an open question, and in relation to a lot of these questions, I would say you have to play to your strengths as a team. So like when you're setting out your initial plan for your team, how to get the best out of your team, then you'll come up with the approach that you want when it comes to defending. So you may decide that you want to have a +1, a sweeper system of some kind, or you may decide you want to have your wing forwards dropping back, or you may go a bit further and have a zone cluster system, or whatever it is. I think the answer to that question is really, you decide what will work best for your team, and you play to the strengths of your team. And I think those two things, a unit with defense working as a unit and a man marking, like, it's not necessarily one or the other. Like if you think even the way Dublin play the All-Ireland champions, they do defend as a unit, But somebody like John Small, who is a really good man marker, will almost always be given a job to man mark somebody. So every time they play Tyrone, he'll be marking Peter Hart as their playmaker. So again, if you have somebody who's an exceptional man marker, an exceptional defender, then maybe you might want to utilize him as part of your defensive setup. So I think it's a case of deciding what's best for your team, playing to your strengths. You can incorporate both defending as a unit and man marking if that's what's going to work best for you. So I think, decide initially what you want to do, and then just put it into practice.
Brilliant, deadly Frank. Thank you. So the next one just is for Eddie there. So my team struggles to prevent goals being scored during matches. They're a hard-working and intelligent team, perform pretty well in general all around the pitch, but I struggle to explain how they can improve on letting teams pass through the middle. Are there any activities that we can work on throughout the year to improve players understanding these situations and know how to go about preventing them, or at least make them more difficult for teams? So working that ball down through the middle. Just one there for you, Eddie.
Okay. Firstly, reading that, I think he's got two main qualities there. So they're an intelligent, hard-working team. So my first step there would be, before activities, I would have a discussion with them and I would raise awareness around the issue. I would discuss with the players what they think the problem is, and I would take the focus off the end result, because they may be just looking at conceding the goal, and try and turn the focus into what's actually happening before the goals are conceded. What do you think could be done, what needs to be done, and see, can they help be part of the solution? Okay, rather than just running an activity hoping it will fix it, because they may identify something that you're missing, number one, or that other players are missing on the pitch as well, as discussion with the group. Secondly, then, I would probably, before I'd even do a game or an activity, I'd walk through a situation that has happened and then question them. See, how would they fill that area, or who is the most likely candidates to fill that area if other players are caught up marking their men? Have you explained what you want them to do defensively clearly? Okay. Then obviously I would put it straight into the game situation, and I may condition a couple of players that I feel are the most capable of blocking up the middle, or the stronger, and I may condition them during the game and say, your total job when we are on the defensive is to organise that middle third and block up that middle and your positioning, and that's what I'm going to grade you on in the next couple of games, how well you do it and how well you encourage other people to do it when you're not in a position to do it. Okay, and create awareness around what's happening, but create the awareness towards the solution. That we're not worried about conceding the goal, we're just worried about getting in position so that we can prevent it from happening. I hope that helps.
Yeah, and again, it's working individual players, and Frank mentioned it as well, and it's very important that we look at the individuals as well as the team. So great advice there, Eddie. So the next one then up, Alan. So how can I get the most from frees, sideline balls in different areas of the field? Any games or activities you would recommend for these situations? So looking at frees and sideline balls.
I think it's back to Eddie's point there, and Frank mentioned it as well. It's about looking at exactly what you want from your team and exactly what you want from these scenarios. So you have to get your players used to it. Again, back to that point, that your players are used to being in these situations and setting up your training sessions so that it resembles exactly what you're looking for in a match. So you might have an image in your head of something you've seen or something you've used yourself from when you were playing, and how you see it working out. But it's very hard for players to see that, and especially with the youth these days, they're very visual. Everything has to be a visual and a walkthrough and a scenario and set it up for them. It's not a case that you're able to even do it on a whiteboard maybe. Sometimes that isn't the way they learn, and we have to be cognizant of that the whole time. So we have to be looking at setting up the routine and the scenario, exactly what each person's role is, as Eddie was talking there, who does what and who moves there, and just giving them loads and loads of time to practice it. It's not something that you stick in for 2 minutes at the end of a training session, or you say to them at half time, or just before going field. It's something that they have to get used to doing and used to knowing how to move, how to make that space to get it. So, for example, a one that I would have had a lot of the time when I was playing in goals was that people stop when they hear the whistle. We would have tried to get into the backs and the midfielders, is that when the whistle goes, that the ball goes wide, that's where you become alive. That's where everyone starts moving. That's where everyone is making runs. So that's where Dublin are different to everyone else. And we were trying to instill that into our game for a few years, that when the ball goes wide or around the back, that's when you really, really become alert. You get your break, you get your rest when the ball's far into the field. But you set it up that everyone is looking for the kick out like they're it's in open play. So if you have a free in the sideline, you want everyone looking for the ball the exact same way as they would in open play. So they're making decoy runs, they're making support runs, they're making different runs. So you have to get that into your mentality so that when the whistle goes, you will actually be more alert and you're moving. And their players get used to that. So you have to set that up in training sessions and set routines like that.
I think the repetition point that you're saying, Alan, is very, very important there, that repeating things and teaching people learn different ways visually and walkthroughs and things. So that's something that we really need to be cognizant of, as you said, that they're all learning differently. We have to go through different ways, that we can't just run it once on the pitch. You have to see it different ways and walk through them, and then they'll learn better. So that's a great little point.
Sorry, just lastly, just back to Frank's point, you have to show each player the benefit for them and the benefit for the team out of it, so that they can get to see it. Thanks, Frank.
Brilliant, yeah, brilliant. Okay, nip on. Going to give you a rest, lads. I'm just going to a quick answer here. One that came in just later on in the day was transition from defence to attack. What are some examples of simple games or drills that keep everyone involved but put across the main coaching points, and how long you'd allocate for them? So really quick answer on this. On the GAA webinar series, Ger O'Connor done a full presentation, a full hour and 20 minutes on transition play. So he goes through what the stats of it, videos of it, and games, and how it implemented in training sessions. So if you want to, we'll have resources at the end that you can click on, but there's a full workshop on that. Rather than me going into a small little point for yourself, there's a full workshop on that, and you'll get loads out of it. So the person sending that question, transition from defence to attack, there's a full webinar there, and we have it in the link in the resource when you can download it as well. So that'll just nip you on there, but it's a brilliant resource, a full hour looking at transition. So it's a fantastic webinar. I'd advise everyone to look at it. Really, really good. Okay. Next one is the psychological part and working with players. So we have up next Alan. So we're looking at, I suppose, what advice would you give on getting more commitment from weaker players? So that's something that happens in all clubs, no matter what age it is.
Yeah, I suppose when I went down through the questions, Paddy, and I was looking at it, I thought this was probably one of the toughest questions in the whole pack. And I talked to a few different people today and to get their advice and get their thoughts on it as well. But I suppose the thing is, first of all, you have to ensure that they're getting game time and that they're seeing the reward, that they're not just a number at training. So looking at your formal games program in the county, okay, some of these weaker players mightn't be even getting a run, might be only getting a few minutes. We have to have it in your head as well and be conscious of the fact that they're turning up at training and they're involved, but maybe for the duration of the summer when the championship's going on, they mightn't be getting a run if we're talking about your 17, 18-year-olds, things like that. So you have to be able to provide games for them, whether it's practice games or different tournaments or competitions like that you enter. Be cognizant of that the whole time. We also have to kind of reward and recognise these players and show that they are part of the bigger picture, because very easily a lad who feels as a weaker player and maybe realises, like, they're very, very clever, these children, and they realise that they're not one of the main people, and that maybe there's a few plays that are set up in the game and they're not in any part of them, or the ball maybe never comes to them in different scenarios. So we have to kind of give them reward and recognition. And what I'd be advising there is maybe give them leadership roles during training. Ask them for their feedback, ask them directly. Like, they probably mightn't talk up in the group when you're looking for feedback, but ask directly, what's their opinion? Get them to give you feedback. Give them the job of deciding which way they want to set up, just small little things that make them feel more and more part of it and that they're valued. They just have to feel valued throughout. Now, I know that's a bit of a long-winded answer, but we just have to make those players feel valued. And if any of the other lads want to come in on that one, it was one I thought was a very tough one today to try and come right.
Loads of ideas there, Alan. I think one I would try and use is linking your stronger players and your weaker players up as well when you're playing games. That maybe you get the stronger player to work on his kick passing. Well, it's his job to get the ball into the weaker players. And you'll just say, today I want you feeding the ball into Martin, using your weak side or whatever. And that will challenge the stronger player to work on that kick pass, but it'll also help the weaker player get more touches of the ball, and they'll feel better that the stronger player is playing with them. So it's a different way of challenging them as well. So loads of advice there, and it happens in every club. But these players are so important to us because numbers are so important, but also these players could be our stronger players down the line. And we don't know where players are at until they get to their mid-20s. Players don't develop properly until then. Our best player under 14 might be way off the mark when they get to minor levels. So as I say, it's very, very important to keep them committed and keep them going. Deadly. Okay, so Eddie, we have one here. So we've tried to encourage children to practice at home. So this is, I suppose, very prevalent for the times we're in, by using challenges. But engagement from the parents has been non-existent. Any tips for improving engagement during these isolated times with skill challenges and things, Eddie, that you've tried in your club?
Okay, so what I tried to do was I tried to nip it in the bud before it started. And the first thing we did was we didn't create a child skill challenge. We created a parent and child skill challenge. So, for instance, we did a football and a hurling one. But while we gave the skill out to the child, they had to complete it in a certain amount of time. In the same amount of time, the parent had 3 or 4 physical exercises, low intensity, that they had to compete. Okay, and they both had to post it up. So even though it may be only 10 minutes or less of exercise for the parent, it was getting them active, it was getting the child active, and they also knew that every parent within the group was going to have to take on this as well. So they could rotate it between them, and they hopefully got a little bit of involvement. What they also did was, as groups, we created little point scoring systems that each household had to accumulate a couple of points, so they could post their video back into a group of the parent and the child completing the tasks, and they would get so many exercises, and then the team would get a score. Okay, probably a little bit of work in it, but ultimately they just have to post it. It's not a big deal. More completion that the household has done it, and they get 6 points, and the whole team can accumulate a target of, they have to beat 50 points in a week or something like that. So depending on how many teams and that they have in a unit. They were probably the main things we've tried. A lot of them competed, a lot of them didn't. I think overall they kind of got into it once they got a bit settled, and then they moved on to programs where they would take a video clip of one child striking a ball, the parent catching it, striking it again, and then they would try and reconnect all the video clips of the team together so that each of the kids and the parents could interact as a group, even if it's only for a couple of seconds. They could see their friends and their parents as well practicing. So they made a video link of that as well. So hopefully that helps.
It's definitely still something that we've a couple more weeks, hopefully not too long, but we definitely have a bit of time. So if clubs want to nip into that and try something like that they haven't been getting engagement from their players when they're sending out skill challenges, that's a great idea to get the parents more involved. Great stuff, brilliant. Yeah, so structure and planning is the final one, and the one that really links it all together. So questions on structure and planning your sessions and for the whole year. So we're going into Eddie here again, and this is one here. So how would you introduce new children into training mid-season who may be struggling with basic skills you have already covered earlier in the year or the season? What's the best way to bring up children up to speed with skills without upsetting the session that's going on? So a little bit similar to Alan's one earlier on, but talking about a child that's coming in probably mid-season.
Okay. Well, the first thing is to note is to take the pressure off yourself, because you won't coach 3 years or 6 months in 3 or 4 sessions. So that's not possible. If a child doesn't have a skill level, it's going to take time to develop. So the first thing you need to do is set basic targets for it during the session. So if you're doing an activity like kick passing or hand passing, whatever it is, modify the skill so that the child can participate in the drill for that child. They will get more enjoyment out of it if they can participate with the team rather than failing the skill the whole time. So that's one thing. The second would be to set a little individual target for the child. For motivation, it's the most important thing. So I want you to achieve 3 good hand passes in the session today. Whether it is during a drill, whether it's during the game, it doesn't matter. They just have a specific target, because what you want to do, if someone has come that late into the season, they want to become part of it. So they definitely won't improve if they don't get motivated. So by achieving small targets, it will encourage them to stay there. Then it's probably your most difficult job. But I think that last point will help with it as well. You've got to, we all say homework, give homework, but more importantly, you've got to enthuse the child to want to practice at home. Okay, so whatever way you do that, by setting them a little target, like, I'm going to count, you got your 3 hand passes this week, I want you to get 5 next week. So it's very important if you do 2 practice sessions at home, whether it's off a wall, whether it's with another person or something, but you have to encourage and enthuse them to come back. And the biggest part of that is, if you set a challenge like that, you cannot forget to check it the following week or to point it out during the session to them that they've made another achievement.
That's a huge point. Following through is huge, Eddie, isn't it?
Yeah, because if you don't notice the work that I've done probably for you, I will look at it. I've done this for you so that I can be better, but I'm doing it because you've asked me to, and you don't acknowledge that. You've probably lost all the goodwill with that person for them to practice at home as well. So you don't want that to happen. As I said, the biggest thing is, don't put the pressure on yourself. You can't coach 3 years in 3 or 4 sessions, or you can't coach 6 months in 3 or 4 sessions. So it's step by step, stage by stage, and you can be surprised sometimes how someone can improve and how quickly they can. Okay.
Deli, thank you. Okay, next up then. So Frank, so let's look on reviewing your sessions and things. So how would you review your session or whole season in order to get a permanent information and improving your coaching? So how do you review your season session to look back and try and improve yourself as a coach?
Again, very good question. I think if you take it, first of all, in terms of the sessions, and you covered this very well a couple of weeks ago, Paddy, in relation to session planning. And Eddie mentioned about having a target or having a purpose for a session. And that would be the first thing. I would always set out an objective or 2 objectives or 3 objectives for a session. Like, we have them for a very limited amount of time for coaching. So it's valuable time that we need to get the most out of. So I think that planning out what the purpose of the session is really important. So if you're doing something skills-based, for example, you might want to set the target, for example, of demonstrating good technique or the effective technique for a near-hand tackle, or demonstrating a good technique for an evasion skill. Or if it's gameplay, you might decide, I want to show how we can respond to a turnover, how we defend a turnover when we lose the ball. So the point is that you set out with an objective, you set out with a target or a number of targets as part of your session planning, and everybody involved in this session is aware of those, what the purpose is. So it depends on what's feasible. Like, ideally, I'd like to get the session plan out to whoever's involved in the session the day before, if possible. It may not be possible. It may be a case of, as it often is, more realistically, maybe the coaches meeting up 15 or 20 minutes before a session, and perhaps the lead coach or the manager saying, look, lads, this is what we're going to work on tonight. This is what we want to achieve. This is X, Y, and Z. And across the management team or the coaching team, you agree what's going to happen in the session. So once you know what you're doing and what the purpose of the session is, then that's the first part of the review. That's the first part of your own evaluation. And it's so important to reflect yourself as a coach on how well things went. Like, we've all come away from sessions feeling that it was a great session, and we've all come away from sessions feeling that wasn't so good. That drill didn't work well. So, like, if a drill isn't working well, the first question we have to ask ourselves is, did we explain the drill properly? Have we told the kids exactly what we want them to do? And as one of the lads mentioned, have we shown them exactly what they want to do? Have they got the messages that we want them to get? So we reflect after the session, certainly what we intended to do. And I think it's a good idea after the session for the management team, again, just to have a chat about the session, how well it went. And it's no harm if you're walking off the field, talking to a couple of players on the way off. How did you find that? How did that work? What worked well? What didn't work well? So you do that from session to session. Obviously, over a longer period of time, look, results dictate and performance of the team dictates. So if performances are good and there is signs of improvement, you can reflect on how well your coaching is going. Depends what your season objectives are. It's not all about winning and losing, especially at underage level. There's always a development goal as well, and development objectives. So regardless of how well your win-loss ratio is, can you look back and say, well, these players have certainly improved over the course of the season. Their skill levels are better, their gameplay is better, and then that is a success in itself. Obviously, we're all judged on wins and losses to some extent, but it's not the be all and the end all. So I would say, you reflect, you set a goal for your session, you reflect on how well that session went then by yourself and with your management team. And over a period of time, then you're looking for the same thing. You're developing skills improvement, gameplay improvement, and you're analyzing that as the season goes on at the end of the season.
Yeah, setting them objectives are so important, isn't it?
It's crucial, yeah, because otherwise you're going out and you're going aimlessly into a session, and the lads will see that. Like, they like to come to training, they like to know, it runs like clockwork. They know exactly what they're doing. If there's a number of stations that, the transition time is minimized, things are set up and ready to go, so that, again, it's getting the most out of that session and making it valuable to you and making it valuable to the players. And that happens with good planning.
Yeah. Okay, next one, you're up for the fire line again, Frank. So, one key player demands the ball all the time. This happens in every club from the rest of the team. He is always looking out for a score. Other players are now afraid not to pass the ball to him.
I think every coach on tonight will recognise that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
From not just coaching, but from playing or being involved. And it's true of every sport. I think there is a dominant player. I'm watching The Last Stand at the moment. Everybody's talking, but we saw the way Michael Jordan acted and the way he behaved. But look, good players, as we know, good players, and the point is true of all good players, are driven and highly motivated. And they have high standards for themselves, and they expect high standards, and they're driven for everybody else to achieve as well. And sometimes that comes across, it's born out of frustration sometimes. But it doesn't mean that we stand back as coaches and we watch it happen. Ultimately, we want to get the best out of our team, and we have to coach to make that happen. So I would say there's two aspects to it. Like, if you have, let's say, a forward, for example, who is very greedy on the ball, and this is a balance. I mean, my view is that good forwards tend to be a bit greedy anyway, and that's somewhat of aspect of what makes them good, is that they have an incredible confidence in themselves, and an ability to be able to make the right decision under pressure and to be able to take those scores, and that's absolutely fine. So you have to get a balance on it. The other aspect of it, and maybe I'll address first, the giving out and the complaining. Like, I would definitely tackle that, and I would encourage people to tackle that. And I think that's tackled best at the early stages, when you're setting out from your group what kind of a group you want to have, how you want the players to behave with each other, how do you want them to communicate with each other. You have that discussion. And if they want a situation whereby they're all effing and blinding each other, then that's fine. I won't be here. But if that's the way you want to do it, that's fine. But, you come to an agreement among the group that, look, we're not going to be doing that. We're going to be encouraging. We're going to be positive. And that's our culture. That's part of the way we're going to communicate with each other. And then over time, it doesn't happen overnight, but eventually it does, that you eradicate that over a period of time. And again, what I said earlier on, it's going to involve an individual chat as well with that person, and a questioning around, again, look, what is the reason for this? What's in your mind? What's the picture in your mind when you're saying these things? How do you think the other guys are feeling who are on the receiving end of this? Like, if you were on the receiving end, how would you feel? Is it going to impact their confidence? Is it going to reduce their ability for the team? And overall, is it a good thing or a bad thing? So you tease it out, and eventually you come around to the conclusion that it's not a good thing for the team overall. And sometimes for some players it's a longer project than for others. But personally, I would be working to eradicate the negative commentary as much as I possibly could. In relation to the other aspect of it, they continuously going for their own score and not passing the ball. Again, it's a balance, but there is a time to pass the ball. Again, that's an individual coaching thing. When you have that conversation around, look, okay, if you keep the ball all the time, is that the best thing for the team? And it's not, obviously, because it becomes predictable, it becomes easy to defend. If you're double teamed, then what happens then? So, there is a time, and you can, somebody mentioned, one of the lads mentioned showing. You can show good examples. I mean, I go back again to video clips of players and situations I can think of. Going back to Michael Jordan, saying to the guy, I'm going to be double teamed, I'm giving you the ball, be ready, and the guy is wide open and he scores the basket. Or Conor Callaghan 2 years ago, doing a dummy solo, taking two defenders out and just flicking the ball across for Niall Scully to palm it into the net. So it's a two-pronged approach. Like, I would definitely work on the communication, keeping it positive, and then I would talk to the individual about trying to certainly not discourage him. Like, I mean, you want to get the best out of him as well, but to come around to the conclusion that for the betterment of the team, there is a time to pass the ball as well.
Brilliant, Frank. Some great examples and very current as well with the Dublin and the Michael Jordan examples. Thanks for that, Frank. Brilliant. Eddie, so this is another thing that will come in a lot of club trainings as well, but especially underage. So how do you deal with a player who's disruptive in training? He's a good player, but always talking and messing, distracts some players and annoys others. How do I improve his attitude and get the best from him? So, tough one, Eddie.
Yeah, it's as I said, it's common enough, and it probably depends on the player and how disruptive and the age, especially. I'm just going to answer probably, if I'm looking at a teenager here in their later teens, I would probably chance talking to the players and trying to give them a little bit of leadership duty. And I would rule out one of the issues, which could be boredom or could be wanting to feel more involved and more powerful. So I would look at their strengths and I would speak with them in a role and say, we're going to work on this area tonight. I think you're strong in that. I want you to take a bit more of a leadership or a coaching role with the team tonight. Try and involve them in that way. That would be my first option. Obviously, speak with them on the level about what's going on as well and try and gain mutual ground for the benefit of the team. If it's probably more, I'm not sure if it's a child or a teenager, then it's more of a discipline issue where they're just being disruptive and it's causing too much upset for the session to go along smoothly. You would have to speak with the parent. Now, probably what we have in our club in Nave Olaf is like, if a child is too disruptive, we would speak with the parents. We would explain to them that we're going to require their assistance for training because we can't give up coaching time. The session's not running smoothly and we need you to assist with the training session to make sure that the child participates properly. And hopefully that eradicates it before they come in the first session or two. The same with the youth player. You need to probably speak with the parent and just say they have an awful lot of strengths here, but this is disruptive, and if it becomes to a stage where it's going to affect the team performing and training and takes that level of that higher level out of the training aspect, well, we'll have to look at the situation and decide whether or not he fits into the group or not. So we'd ask you to try and improve the player and have a speak with them. It's probably a difficult one. It takes probably, as I said, if the lads want to come in, it takes a little bit of how disruptive, what's the cause of it, and what to maybe decide on what steps you need. I hope that's helpful. If you want to pose another question in the group, I'll take it as well. Yeah, there's no bother if it's more specific. Yeah. Sorry, is that all right, Paddy? Yeah.
That's 100%, Eddie. Yeah. No, yeah, I'm up again. Sorry, lads. No, 100%. Some good examples there, Eddie, looking at the child and youth. And again, it's down to the situation, but it's about talking to people and looking at your goals and objectives as well. So, nip on just to Alan there. We're a small club. We tend to have big overlap with players from different grades, under 13s playing under 16s. I struggle to find a balance of training with strength, endurance due to small numbers and age difference. So I tend not to do much of this. Any recommendations how I can, or ideas on this?
Yeah, this is very common issue, and particularly going around the province, you encounter it a good bit, and talking to different GDAs and GPOs and that, and they're hearing it everywhere. So my advice on this one would be that, okay, we have to treat everybody equally and make sure everyone's part of a team, but at the same time, we can't hold anyone back. And I think it comes back to the very first question I was asked about, and I brought in the spot and fix. You look at the players. You may have groups at different elements that are doing different things, but I wouldn't sacrifice that element of preparation just because you feel some lads aren't up to keeping up with the others, things like that. So as you see at a lot of senior level now, MAS runs have come in, and there's lads running at different distances and different lengths, but it's all based on time. So it's what you can actually do in that time yourself. So I wouldn't sacrifice the strength or endurance training in your group just because you have a few younger kids involved. They run for 30 seconds or 40 seconds the same as your 16-year-old does 30 or 40 seconds. It's going to look very differently. They won't be able to go as far, but they're still doing that's at their own age and at their own level. So, that would be the approach I take, whether it's circuits or mass runs or putting a time on your distance. You have endurance down there. So the different things you're doing, use time rather than putting a distance on it. And the other thing in that is you really have to know your players there. So you know who's spoofing, you know who's kind of dragging the lead a little bit, and you have to know who's putting in a huge effort. So you're able to have a word with them and be able to push them on that little bit extra. But I definitely wouldn't sacrifice anything just because of the wide age demographic in your group. I try and make sure that that everyone is still being challenged and you're bringing everyone forward.
Yeah, that's the key point there, Alan. Definitely, everyone being challenged to their own ability, no matter what age they are. That's really, really important. Good stuff. Okay, so just there's one that came in late there again. It's just a quick one on physical training. So, have you some advice on physical training when it should be used? How long per session would you work on it? Should you continue work on a training throughout the year, or should you taper it off coming into the summer months? This is from a minor coach, so we just jotted a few things down. Huge opportunity for physical training at the end of the warm-up. Use your warm-up as a huge gauge for physical training. At the end of warm-up, you can do some circuits, some strength work if you want to do. You can do some speed work. Huge time. You do a ball warm-up, put in the J15 activities, and then do some speed activities after it, incorporating everything. So you're not doing a separate physical session. Another way of doing it would be is break between games and activities. So as you're going from game to game or activity, take a minute break, get a drink of water. Then you can do some core work or some exercise or some upper body work, and then you can go back into your game. So using your session wisely. We went through a lot of that in the session planning. But the big thing I would see is that the football or the hurling is still top priority for you as a coach, but keeping the physical side of it really simple and gradual. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Players are developing differently, different stages. You're not going to jump from, bring it back to a skill element. You're not going to kick the ball 20 yards today and 60 yards tomorrow. So same with your physical side of things. Gradually build it up. If you want to look for some resources, we had our webinar on the S&C, our Longford one that's on the website. You have all the GA15 exercises and programs that are out there, which is a fantastic resource. And it's not just the structure of the warm-up, it's the exercises. The GA15, if you look at any gym session around the country, any physical session teams are doing, they're using all the exercises that are in that, but just at a different stage and a different level. You have the Leinster GAA resistance training course that we run. And also then at the moment, Louth and Offaly have ran some really good webinars on athlete development for young players, and Kildare are actually running a series of 4 webinars. So if you look up on their Twitter page, you'll see where they have the webinars on, but they have some great resources there as well. Okay, we'll just nip on to the next one. So building relationships, the last one, and probably the most toughest and the most important one. So Frank, what advice would you have in relation to selection of management teams? How many should be involved? How would you divide the various tasks? How would you select individuals, or how do you decide who gets the final call? Should clubs introduce a policy or template around this, or could you share some ideas on it?
Again, a very good question. In relation to selection of a management team, I think my first point would be I think that the manager ideally should be able to make those decisions and should be able to choose his or her own management team. I think obviously trust is a massive thing between the group. You're going to be working very closely together for a long period of time. You want to be assured of confidentiality and you want to be assured of support for each other. And that's why you often see guys who know each other well, have played together, or will end up managing and being in the same management team. And you often see management and coaches going between different teams because they're happy with how they work together. I think in relation to a template, should a club issue a template around this? I'm not so sure. I think maybe at underage level, maybe up to under 16, I have seen clubs set out roles and responsibilities. But I think, once you get into competition type age categories or competitions, I would suggest that the manager drives it and the manager picks his team. The other question in relation to the dividing of the roles, again, it's similar to what I said earlier on about the team. This is no different with your management team, that you want to assign roles and responsibility based on the strengths of people. So you allow people to coach and manage to their strengths. So I certainly think the days are long gone of where one man or one woman is able to do it all when it comes to coaching and managing. You definitely need to delegate. So you can decide yourself based on your team who is happy to coach and who is good at coaching, who might be happy to look after the gear, who might be happy to look after the organising. But again, as manager, as the person leading it, you probably have to decide that. So trust is key. Assign out the roles and responsibility based on the strengths of the individuals and what they're happy to do. And I think up to a certain level, templates and structures can be set by the club or by the organisation. But I think once you get certainly into minor and from there on, it should be the manager who takes the lead on that.
Yeah, really important, the organisation, and splitting the jobs will be something really important as well. So good stuff, Frank. So just Frank, one more there. So what advice would you give when we're disagreeing with a coach within your management team on selection or the goals for the team?
Yeah,
that'd be a tough one.
Well, it is and it isn't. Like, I think as a manager or as a coach, it's important to be challenged. Actually, so one of the lads mentioned that earlier on. I don't think there's any point in having people with you who are going to agree with everything you say and everything you do. That is not really helpful. I wouldn't be afraid of being challenged or people having different views. In fact, I think it's a good thing to have good views or different views among the group. When it comes to the goals of the team, I think that you want to have consistent messages going out from the management team to the group once you get up and you get running in relation to training, in relation to matches. So I think you need to set out the goals initially at the start among the management team. So you set out roughly who does what and what way we're going to organise training, what are we going to do on match day, what kind of an identity does the team have, how do we want to play. So you set out and you get your country views and you agree it, and you then put it into practice and you manage it over a period of time. In relation to team selection, like it's always an interesting one, but you certainly have to allow people, I would suggest and I would recommend giving people responsibility, giving people roles. I think Eddie or one of the lads mentioned that earlier on as well. Like you have to, the management team have to be motivated in the same way the players are motivated. So if you're making all the decisions and someone's coming along to the training session and they have no role or no impact, they won't be there for very long. You wouldn't blame them. Like, it's a case of getting the best out of your management team as well, and that's often by giving somebody more responsibility and certainly listening. Like, I mean, I would always definitely listen to any points that have to be made. But I think when it comes to team selection in particular, like you'd say, okay, certainly, but what's the rationale? What's the reason? Like, you want to drop Damien Sheridan from goals. Okay, well, you want to replace him with such and such a player. What's the logic behind that? I may or may not agree, but if you give me your reasons as to why you think that is the right decision for the team, then at least we can have a discussion about it. So in summary, I'd say actually having country views is not a bad thing. It's a healthy thing, actually. Allow people to have their view, listen to their view, discuss it, set out the roles and work towards getting the best out of your management team in the same way as you would from your players.
You never got a chance to drop Damien, and Paddy Cullen was your club man, so you could have got that
well,
in there.
That was never going to happen, no.
Good stuff. Okay, just slipping through, everyone. Just keep with us here. We've 3 more questions to go, and then we're going through the lads, just their tricks and tips for you, and then we have the resource section. So just, Alan, just a quick one on the coaching officer role. What advice would you give to coaches who are not willing to row in behind your direction as a coaching officer? And this is something that's very important. The coaching officer, I feel, being the most important person in the club at the minute. So, go ahead, Alan.
Yeah, I think Frank nearly answered this question for me there. When you're looking at the debate among management teams and disagreements, if you have a belief in what you're doing, and depending on the type of person you are, you have to stick with that, and you have to try and get people to row in with you. But I'd be big for that the coaching officer is such an important role, and that they're setting the agenda and to make sure that they have the backing of the club. If you're a person who kind of isn't that comfortable with confronting the issue, or maybe it's someone who's held in very, very high esteem in the club that is going off on their own solo run, but you want to try and pull them back into the way you want to go with the club and the club wants to go, I think it's important to create the opportunity for a community of practice in the club. So that's where you, as the coaching officer, and you have your chairman, your secretary, and different members of your committee with you, and you invite in all the coaches, and you set out the plan, and you set out a long-term plan of where you want to go and the development through the ages and what we see as the way for Dramard or whoever or Clongish to go forward in this. And I'm not plugging the lads or pushing the lads around here, but Paddy, Owen, Kieran, Damien, Seamus, they all have got plenty of training and this kind of thing. And, you know, if you ever need them to come out into the club to help set up the tourist player pathway, or to try and work with those difficult individuals to get everyone to buy into the one plan. The boys are very good facilitators in that, and have got plenty of training in that. So the big thing for me there is you bring them into the room, you show them that the whole club is going in this direction, the one direction, and you don't highlight it per se, but it'd be very easy for them to see that they're not buying into the overall ethos of where the club wants to go. And from then, the peer pressure will really come on. And if you do really get it very tough, I would advise having an open club meeting or a parents meeting where everyone gets to see that this is the club plan going forward. And it'll be very hard for that coach not to buy into what's going on. If you have all the other coaches in the club, the hierarchy of the club, and also the parents of the children that are training and involved, and they're all pushing one way, and you have one or two coaches going in a different direction.
Brilliant. And I think that goes back to a lot of the questions you've had tonight, is that just showing them why you're doing this and the benefit of it, like Frank and Eddie went through that as well, is so important. Yeah. And seeing the benefits of what you're doing, whether it's on the field regarding kick passing or tackling or disrupting the training session or coaching officer's role and where you want the club to go, showing them the benefit of it and the evidence is huge. Brilliant stuff. Okay, so we'll just nip to Eddie. So we've all had this as well, and it's something that we all have to deal with from time to time. Just a quick little answer on this, Eddie. Any advice on how to deal with parents who think their child is the next Paul Barden, but in reality their young player struggles with basic skills of football? It's always the coach's fault that he doesn't get picked and always favours his own and his friends. So, sticky situation, but there's probably a bit of layering behind this. Go ahead, Eddie.
Okay, I might just take the second part of it first. About being picked and all that, I would advise all coaches, especially down from minor, to approach games as not selection but development. It's been touched on a couple of times with all age groups. Like, if you don't get an opportunity to do something, you're not going to get any better at it. So adequate game time from the coach here is probably something that's required. Okay, I'm not fully sure of the situation. All parents are going to probably see their child in that light anyway. Some are probably more vocal than others. What I would advise here is that the coach takes the first step. You need to develop a relationship with the player or with the parent, okay? And explain to the parent the value that you see, firstly, number one, in their child, and number two, you've got to add to it with why it hasn't been selected as often as they could have been, okay, within the areas of skills. So as we mentioned earlier, encourage the parent to work with the child, encourage the child to work on those skills as well to be better, but you have to reward that with the game time. Now, if they choose not to do that and not to work in that area, well, obviously, it's probably on them. But I think it's important for the coach here to make that first step and build that relationship. But it's also important that they give adequate game time to show that they're giving them the opportunity to try and get to the level that's required.
Including the parent is huge already, isn't it?
Yeah, you don't really have a chance if you don't, because there's obviously a big breakdown in relationship there. But I think you need to go to the parent, you need to start the relationship, and you also need to say, I want them to get on the team, I want them to be as good as they can, and I'm going to try and help them in this area. But you've also got to show it by giving the adequate game time as well.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay. Yeah, no, two good examples. So we're going to go into now just the tips and tricks and a bit of advice from the lads. So the lads are going to go through just a couple of things that work well for them as a coach, and they feel that really important. So Eddie, you're up first there. So just a quick one on building rapport.
Yeah, I'm just talking about so building rapport and having a relationship with your players. Okay, it gives you the best opportunity to improve them. Okay, when I say create time to know something about your players outside of football, what I mean by that is, if I'm not playing well and I'm still coming training and I can't develop my confidence, the one thing I probably don't want to talk about with the coach is about the game. So I've got to try and create that opening where I can speak about it. So knowing something about the player, their other interests, to generate that conversation and show that you're interested in that player, okay, can be a massive help. Always know players' names. It sounds so simple. Okay, use their names when talking to them as well, especially if you're getting attention, but mainly as a sign of respect. Okay, I always think it's a sign of respect if someone knows your name, and they use it frequently, and you're involved, and I am majorly part of the group. And to create that trust and relationship that we're working together, because I know something about them, I'm interested in them as a person. I'm not just interested in what I can use them for to win games. Okay, so I think it's important to get that message across.
It's a really simple tip, and it's so basic, but it's so important. And it's really, and if you don't have the rapport and you don't have the names and things like that, your relationship can break down so easy. So some great ideas there, brilliant stuff. Okay, Frank, next one just on your coaching language.
Yeah, this is something like you could spend a webinar on this one, Paddy. There is a lot of research and the various books even written on the subject, and you can bring it back down to the importance really of you as a coach and how you communicate with your group of players. So it's communicating the messages in a simple way and in a way that they will understand, so that they hear what you intend them to hear. So there's a couple of basic tips. I heard Pat Gilroy actually talking about this recently, but the first one is to try and be specific and avoid the sort of vague terms. And I've certainly had to learn this and adapt my coaching and my instructions, because like how many of us have said, lads, we want more intensity in the second half, or something that we want you to get stuck in the second half. Like, when you think about what does that actually mean? What way is that being interpreted by the players? So, like, if I was to ask the group here, and we haven't got time now to put into the box there, what do you think I'm meaning when I say we want more intensity in the second half? Like, you probably get a varying degree of answers around maybe more tackling, or we want to win more breaks, or we want to get close, or we want to compete more for the ball. So really it's about being specific. So then I should be saying, we've had 10 tackles in the first half, let's try and aim for 12 successful tackles in the second half. Or I want to make sure you talk to individual player. Your man has got it in front of you and won the break on 2 occasions. Now it's your turn to get in front of him, win the next break. So, there are plenty of them out there. And I suppose, again, we have to reflect on the language we're using, and that we need to be giving very, very specific instructions so that they're able to see exactly what we're asking them to do. That's the first one. Avoid the generics. The second one is to think about the don'ts and the no's. And again, it's something we all do. Like, even in a drill, we might say, I want no fouls. I want no drop passes. Don't kick the ball away. Like, all of those are negative instructions. So as I'm saying that to you, like, what's coming into your mind is I'm saying no foul, or as I'm saying don't drop the ball. But the only thing your brain can actually visualize is what I'm telling you, which is a foul, and which is dropping the ball or kicking the ball away. And again, this is actually scientifically, people have researched this, and to say that, especially in under pressure, you will only do what your brain can actually see. So you won't imply what you're supposed to do. So we should be saying, pass the ball to the guy's chest, hand pass it to his chest, kick past the ball towards the area that he can run out to his advantage. So in other words, you're telling them what you want them to do rather than what you don't want them to do. So there would be 2 tips I would suggest that we think about: avoiding the generic terms and being specific and instructing them on exactly what we want to do and not what we don't want them to do.
Yeah, and you'll see a huge difference in your players as well, understanding things, which is very important. And it is hard to do.
Yeah, well, the key question to ask yourself is, as you finish talking, can the players now visualize, and one of the lads mentioned that, can they visualize in their mind or in their brain what I'm asking them to do? And if it's a bit like saying, don't think of the elephant in the room. The only thing your brain can see is an elephant in the room. So it's a case of creating that picture in their minds of exactly what you want them to do. And you will only do that by describing it in positive language.
It's normally the pink elephant, isn't it?
Change
blue.
Slightly.
Yeah. So Alan, thanks for that, Frank. Brilliant. Just Alan there, just your couple of tips for the coaches.
Yeah, I suppose the tips I'd have is prepare your session. Obviously, Frank's mentioned it already that the players are going to pick up and stuff. If you're not prepared and you don't have your plans and the transition times are down when you're going from one drill to the next or one game to the next, the players are going to know you're making it up. So you have to come across as the organised professional one that's turning up the training session and you're in charge. So prepare your session. But at the same time, if something is going really well or if something isn't going well, don't be a slave to your read the session, read the players, read the activity, and be able to make that change and have a few backup ideas in your head of how you're going to change it. And not just, lads, after dropping the ball 5 times, we're going doing laps, lads, or we're going doing press-ups. Have a different change that's going to vary up what you're doing. The next thing would be come back to Eddie's as well, building a rapport, but know your players. Know what makes each individual tick. Be able to spot if a lad is coming to a training session in bad form. You know, he may lash out at a player or he may just be totally disinterested. Be able to spot that from a long way away. So you have to get to know your players both on and off the pitch and know their body language and know how to react around players. And, you know, you have to be able to spot the little things that's going on in a group dynamic. Not everyone in 20, 25 players is going to get on. Not everyone is going to treat each other properly. So know who you can put in groups together and who you get work together. So just get to know your players, and that way you can get the best out of them. Last one, I've said it a few times tonight, the big thing for me is allow your players an opportunity to succeed and to fail in your training sessions so that they know what it's like in a match situation. Don't just land into a match and everything's going to work for you. So if you're doing unopposed training sessions, a lot of the training activities, a lot of the time things are working out for you and it's grand and everything's great. But if you're not putting your players in position that they are after failing maybe a few times at training and then get the chance to succeed, when they go into a match, they're not going to know how to react. They're not going to know that I'm too slow going to my left side. I get blocked. I got blocked 3, 4, 5 times at training. So I decide I'm going to my right from now on. You know, and you have to put players into that situation at training. Your training has to be even more testing than any match that the lads will come up against if you can create that scenario.
Brilliant, Alan. Thanks all 3 lads. Some great ideas there and great nuggets for coaches to take away and again to bring on to the coaching field and to start working on now. All them things can be worked on now. It doesn't have to be worked on when we get back on the pitch. You can be planning for this now. So it's really, really good. Okay, Kieran, you can just nip ahead there for a second. So we're just going to go into, just Alan talked about it. Tonight was the Problems Clinic, and obviously we had everyone from the county on here, but this is something that we see maybe going down the line. And Alan mentioned community of practice. Why not get all our coaches in a room from under 8 to minor in the club and have a chat and bring problems? Every coach bring a problem and someone in the club will have an answer for you. Someone in the club will have a better idea how to deal with someone or how to an exercise to use or how to plan your sessions better. Share the knowledge in your club. Don't be working on your own all the time, which is really, really important. And it's something that clubs could start doing and working together. And we do that through, obviously, our terrace workshops will be coming up in June. But it's really important that you as a club feed off the information you have in the club. Someone that's at under 14, under 16, they've been through the 8th, 10th and 12th. They have some nuggets of information that can help you as a coach, or someone that has played a lot of football can help out with the minor coach. There's loads of information. So use this kind of problem clinic idea if you can at all in your club and bring problems to the club and work together and feed off each other, which are really, really important. And just nipping on then to, I suppose, ideas and stuff. And just before we go into this, because this is the last part of the webinar, but it's very, very important. And I want to put a big, huge thank you out to Damien. Damien is in the background, they're working away, but we're very lucky in Longford to have a brilliant games manager, someone that has huge passion for Longford football, hugely organised. When this COVID thing hit us and we weren't allowed in the field, Damien came up with the ideas of the webinars. He's putting them together every week, planning, putting all the work into the background, and he doesn't get a lot of recognition for it. But I think we're definitely, we've been ahead of the curve, and one of the main reasons for that is for Damien. So Damien, thanks for myself, Owen, Kieran and Seamus for all the work you're putting in. As I say, for the coaches in Longford and in club football, I think we're very lucky to have him. And as I say, he's driving us on, and we're hopefully driving you on as coaches. Just finally then, resources. And this is, we've done 8 webinars now. There's loads of resources out there. We'll be putting this on a resource pack at the end, but we'll just skip down through some of them that we think will be very relevant to you. So all our Longford GAA webinars, you can see there. There's a game called Give Us a Game by Ger O'Connor, a fantastic book. has over 50 games for football and hurling in it. Brilliant idea. All these games can be used all the way from nursery all the way up to senior level. And 2 other brilliant books by a well-renowned coach, Philip Kerr, has brought out 2 really good books lately. They can be bought on Amazon. We'll have the links up. Games to Challenge Your Coaching, which is a list of games, and then Developing Gaelic Footballers, Tips and Tricks. Basically, he has 365 tips or tricks that he's came across over his years coaching, and there's some really brilliant nuggets in there. Another great one, Paul Kilgallen, Coaching Children in Sport, that looks into basically the structure of your club, getting buy-in from people, working around your coaching sessions and planning. Really, really good. And if you're on Twitter and things like that, Colin Nally is a great guy to follow for different activities and games. We've used a lot of his work during the webinars. The Learning GAA website, I can't emphasize enough the amount of information is on that website for you. Nip onto the Learning GAA website. We have obviously the game planner on it, but what's brilliant about the Learning website, if you tip onto the YouTube channel, every single webinar Crow Park have ran over the last 8 to 10 weeks is up in it. But even better, the last 8 to 10 years of coaching conference stuff that went on in Crow Park over the last 8 to 10 years are up there. So every presentation, and there's some brilliant videos and presentations up there. So I'd encourage you all to go onto that site and have a look at it. Then we have the Dublin GAA Games video. So basically they've videoed a lot of their workshops. So you can go onto their games development website and click on their videos and purchase videos there. If you're on Twitter again, Coaching the Game is a brilliant Twitter handle. And then at the end there, we have Daily Sports Science Coaching website. It might come across as more of an S&C type website, but a really good one on coaching and developing players through S&C and GAA. So some really good stuff on that. And finally then 2 podcasts. You're listening to podcasts. The Coaching Bubble, which is brought out from the Camogie Association, have over 20 podcasts with world-renowned coaches, and specifically talking about coaching, but also GAA coaching and bringing it into a GAA context is really good. And finally, then the Talent Equation podcast. So that's just a list of extras of resources for yourselves to click on, pick one, give it a go, look at them, try and learn from them. And there's some really good stuff there. So that's just the resources we have for you that you can look up, and we'll have that in the resource pack at the end. Go back here and there. Are we stalled? Okay, so just any questions at the end there, Owen? Was there any questions there, Owen?
Yeah, there was, but Kieran is just going to run through a few bits,
Okay.
and we're going to get to it at the very end. So he just wants to show you the resources.
Plow ahead, Kieran.
We'll come back to that question in a second there, Paddy. Just remind everyone, firstly, on Wednesday, we have our goalkeeping discussion at 8 o'clock with Paddy, Inda and Craig. So make sure you tune in for that one. I'm just going to, for anyone that hasn't seen it before, I'm just going to show everyone the Longford GAA website and where to find all the information. So I'm just going to share my screen again. And there's Longford GAA website loading up there. So it is the home screen, and you're going to go up to the top right and you have your resources, honours, coaching, fixtures, draws. So you're going to go to coaching webinars, and everything we've done over the last 8 weeks or so are all there. So all the recordings of it, all the resources and stuff like that. So it's all there for you too. So today's one is the coaching problem clinic. So if you click on that, it'll open up to the resources Paddy and the links Paddy mentioned earlier on. So that's there, all done. Damien has it put in already.
Brilliant. Deadly.
Just
Okay, so
a massive, sorry, go on.
No, finish off, Kieran. Sorry.
Before I go, I just want to say a massive thanks to Eddie, Alan, and Frank. Great content today. I hope everyone took a lot from it. And as Paddy mentioned, a great experience the boys have.
Okay, so we'll just go ahead. As far as I can see, there's only one question in. So I'll just pose it to you, lads, and between us all, we'll get an answer. So we're coaching a team at the minute, probably most likely older, so minor or adult team. And we're happy with training. There's good numbers and it's going well, but the club executive or the club chairman isn't too happy. So what advice would you give to a coach in a scenario like that?
I'll just quick start, lads, and somebody can come in after me. So again, going back to what the lads were doing earlier on, showing the evidence maybe and showing them the numbers you have there and showing the ideas and the improvements in the players and the target you have for your players and your team is very important to show them that you have a good structure in place. Nobody can argue with that. If you have goals and objectives for your team and you're making them, one of them obviously at underage will be numbers, and keeping people playing and trying to show the good work you're doing. They mightn't just know, they mightn't just be aware of all these things. That's very important to show them the evidence and speak to them that way. Anything else, lads, you'd have?
I think, Paddy, just to maybe try to identify what the basis of that unhappiness is. Like, I think it's important always to be talking to the chairperson or the secretary or whoever is your liaison person with the club or with the county board, and maybe try to get to the bottom of it. And talking these things out invariably gets to a solution. So what exactly is the concern? And see, is it based on anything happening in fact, or how can it be addressed? So talking works these things out, in my view.
Anything more to add there, lads?
Yeah, no, I'm club chairman myself for my sins in Walsh Island.
It was you, Alan, was it?
So no, it wasn't. Club chairman and player that's probably going to be dropped this year unless they create a space for me in the goals. I'm out the field at the minute. But no, I think Frank's point there is very relevant. I think all this has to be sorted out by sitting down and talking. An awful lot of hearsay comes out of club meetings, and a lot of different chat about people's opinions, and things could maybe be coming out of meetings wrong, and the information might be coming back and be misconstrued. So I think maybe sitting down and having that chat and a bit of a clear the air thing would be the best approach.
Okay, lovely stuff. So it seems like communication, a clear set of objectives, and then kind of reviewing it over as much as we can is the advice we'd give there. Are we happy with that?
Deadly,
Yeah.
So again, Eddie, Frank and Alan, thanks a million. We leave it there. We're gone a bit over time, but thanks to everyone for joining us and the couple of coaches that were there to answer the questions, and we'll talk to you all soon. See you, everyone.
No other lads.
Cheers on.
Thanks, lads.
Thank you.
Well done, lads.
Bye.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.